Narayana Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so we are continuing our discussion of Canto 3, and in this session, we are going to be focused on chapter 13. But before we begin chapter 13, we need to understand that this is about the appearance of Lord Varāha. The appearance of Lord Varāha is actually described in two different manvantaras. There is basically Chakshusha Manvantara, and then there is Shweta Manvantara, which means that essentially there is an appearance of the Lord when he is whitish in color, and there is an appearance of the Lord when he is dark complexioned. The dark complexioned appearance of Lord Varāha is when he annihilates and when he kills Hiranyaksha. The white complexioned Shweta Varāha is the one who is actually described in this chapter. But then Srila Jiva Goswami, he offers the opinion that Maitreya Rishi, who is having a conversation with Vidura, is amalgamating the two different appearances of Lord Varāha. One that is somewhat reddish and dark, and which actually the appearance is to annihilate and kill Hiranyaksha. And the other is Shweta Varāha, where he comes to restore the Earth planet after dissolution, after the pralaya, after the dissolution of the lower planetary systems. He basically restores the Earth planet so that Lord Brahma could create progeny and he could continue the work in the universe. Now, what is to be understood is that in both functions, both of these appearances of Lord Varāha, one where he is reddish dark, that is the Chakshusha Manvantara, and the other, which is whitish, which is the Shweta Varāha Manvantara. In both of these circumstances, he is coming and he is restoring the planet. He's practically restoring the planet in both circumstances. That is his function. Yeah. So in both these time frames, he is restoring the planet. Now, it is to be understood that Lord Varāha practically is lifting up Earth and then placing the planet on the surface of the Garbhodaka ocean. So in both cases, the process of creation has come to an end. In one case, it is a planned stoppage because they want to basically annihilate the lower planetary systems because the mode of ignorance has risen to such a level that they cannot maintain the process of creation because the population has become extraordinarily dense. Dense as in consciousness-wise, they have become quite dense. And as a consequence, the Lord decides that the lower planetary systems should be dissolved. Now, every planet below Maharloka is destroyed at the end of Lord Brahma's day. So what remains at the end of Lord Brahma's day is you have Maharloka, you have Tapaloka, you have Maharloka, you have Janaloka, you have Tapaloka, and then you have Satyaloka. Satyaloka being the topmost planet, but then Maharloka onwards, you have these four planets. Yeah? So Earth is called Bhuloka. Then there is Swarga, and there are Antariksha. There are a certain group of planets which are closely associated with Swarga. And then above Swarga, there is Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka. So the Gayatri, for example, the Brahma Gayatri, which is the very famous Gayatri given by sage Vishwamitra, and it is also a part of the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda offers us the verse which was received by Vishwamitra. The verse itself is Tat Savitur Varenyam Vargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yonaha Prajodayat. Yeah. But then when the initiation process is done, then the syllables of Om, Bur, Bhuva, Swaha, these are added to Tat Savitur Varenyam Vargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yona Prajodayat. Now, what do these syllables Bur, Bhuva, Swaha actually mean? It essentially means that Bhuloka, you want to be able to transcend the effect of Bhuloka, which is the planet Earth. You want to transcend the Bhuarloka, which is where the planets that are associated with Swarga, etc., and the planetary systems. All the different planetary systems, such as when we hear about the Grahas, the Navagrahas are situated in the Bhuarloka. The Nakshatra Mandali is situated in the Bhuarloka. You want to transcend all of that, and then you want to go higher, and that is Swarga. So you want to even transcend Swarga. So Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha, they want to basically transcend the three different layers of consciousness and go higher and cross over to Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka, where their consciousness can be focused on transcendental objects, and they can meditate on transcendental objects and engage in transcendental service so that they could eventually leave when Lord Brahma departs. So this is the whole purpose of the Gayatri. But then the point being that, without digressing from the topic, the destruction that occurs at the end of Lord Brahma's day is the destruction that occurs of the lower planetary systems from Earth. All the lower planetary systems below Earth are destroyed. And so is the case with Swarga. Swarga, Lord Indra's Swarga is also destroyed. All the Nakshatra Mandali is destroyed. You have the destruction of the Navagrahas. All of these happen at the end of Lord Brahma's day. What remains is Maharloka. So you have Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka. So the Lord basically appears to bring back the Earth planet and restore the Earth planet and the other planetary systems so that the process of creation could continue again. So in one sense, the Lord is also called Varāha. Varāha essentially means Bhu is Bhumi. Bhu is also the potency of intelligence, the potency of creation. So the entire potency of creation is preserved, and that intelligence is given to Lord Brahma by Varāha. So Lord Varāha practically restores the intelligence. He gives him the ability to continue the process of creation whilst he finds that the planet Earth has been submerged. So he comes out of the nostril of Brahma. He increases in size, but he has got beautiful transcendental features. It is described that his transcendental nature is understood because he has beautiful eyes. He has eyes which are so beautiful that the sages in Janaloka, in Tapaloka, Satyaloka, they start offering prayers when they look at the Lord's appearance, because he grows to such a gigantic size after appearing from Lord Brahma's nostril. At first, the size of the Lord is just the tip of the thumb. He is very small, he is minute. He has appeared from Lord Brahma's nostril, so he is basically quite small, but then he starts manifesting his extraordinary size. And then he practically says, it is said, he tosses the skies, he scatters the clouds with his tail, and then dives into the Garbhodaka ocean. As he dives into the Garbhodaka ocean, he uses the faculties of a boar. You see, a boar, which is the wild pig, it has the ability of being able to smell very efficiently. The boar can smell. It actually distinguishes the presence of prey. It distinguishes its food through the sense of smell. It's very, very strong. So he uses the faculties of the boar to actually determine the actual position of the Earth, which has been submerged under the Garbhodaka ocean. It is not an ordinary feat, because the Garbhodaka ocean is unlimited in size, and to be able to unearth, or rather in reality we use the word unearth is appropriate, to be able to actually discover the position of the planet and then dive into the ocean and then bring the Earth back and restore it is no ordinary feat. So when he appears again, he is practically placing the earth on his tusks. You know, the boar, the wild boar, they have tusks. So they're a beautiful white tusk. And then he places the earth back on the surface so that the process of creation could begin. Now, shastrically, what is also done and what is understood is that when a woman is pregnant, there is the concept of water, there is the concept of the fetus, and then there is the concept of holding the pregnancy, because you can get pregnant, but you may not be able to hold the pregnancy. Now, who should be offered prayers to be able to conserve and protect pregnancies? Lord Varāha. It is the best mantra. You can actually chant the Varāha Kavach, and very difficult pregnancies can be resolved by chanting the Varāha Kavach, simply because of the fact that the Lord performs the function of restoring the process of creation. He dives deep into the ocean and he is restoring the process of creation. And the construct of the universe is somewhat similar to the womb of a woman. The construction of the universe is also somewhat similar. Yeah, so you have the water, you have the fetus, you have everything. And then the preservation of the process of creation, which is the actual nurturing of the unborn child in the womb of the mother, that is happening through the mercy of Lord Varāha. So he practically preserves pregnancies. He preserves the process of creation. Yeah, it is actually quite effective. I have observed it in some very, very difficult cases. I have observed the fact that it has helped the couple conceive and bring a child when it has been very, very difficult. So the point being that the universe and the human body is also constructed similarly. And some of these shlokas, etc., are also giving us some level of knowledge in terms of how to use prayers very specifically to preserve life and to move forward. Now, if you travel to Mathura, I'm talking about Mathura city. In Mathura city, there is a hill, and you have to climb the hill, and then you have to go down, and you will reach the bank of the river Yamuna. And there is a ghat, a very specific ghat, which is called the Vishram Ghat. Now, if you go to the Vishram Ghat, from the Vishram Ghat, anybody can tell you where you would be able to find the temple of Lord Varāhadev. There are two temples of Varāhadev in Vishram Ghat in Mathura. One temple has Shweta Varāha, the other temple has the dark Varāha. So both temples are on Vishram Ghat, and you should visit. They are extraordinary. They are next to each other, just 2 steps away. And in both temples, one of the temples, the Lord is whitish. The other temple, the Lord is dark. And why is that particular ghat called Vishram Ghat? It is called Vishram Ghat because Lord Varāha, he engaged in conflict with Hiranyaksha. He defeated Hiranyaksha. He practically won over Hiranyaksha. And then he stopped in Vishram Ghat and took rest. He actually engaged in Vishram. He practically engaged in resting on Vishram Ghat on the banks of the Yamuna. That's why it's called Vishram Ghat. So Vishram Ghat has the Shweta Varāha temple. It's actually very potent. It is amazingly potent. You can feel, the presence of, extraordinary presence there in the temple. The temple itself is in the courtyard of a house, because old Mathura, on top of the hill, there isn't much space. So it is in the courtyard of a house. You enter the house, it is maintained by 3 different families. They take turns once every 3 years, and then they maintain it. Then there's Shweta Varāha Mandir. So next time when you come to Vrindavan, you must visit the Shweta Varāha Mandir and Vishram Ghat. So you'll have an idea as to the concept of Shweta Varāha, and then the dark Krishna Varāha. He is darker in complexion. Both Varāhas have the same function. Their function is to restore the process of creation, and they perform similar functions. In one, there's a conflict; in other, there isn't. In both cases, you can find that they basically perform the same function. So it's quite interesting to actually go through the chapter to find that both of them are described. The sage Maitreya, he amalgamates the description, but then in Jiva Goswami Pad, he has clarified this. So now what we will do is that we will have an understanding of this chapter. We will go through the verses. What we need to understand is that when one is engaging in the service of the Lord, or when one wants to engage in the service of the Lord, all resources that are required, all kinds of protection that is required, all kinds of, I would say, benedictions and special skills, intelligence that is required, all of this is provided by the Lord. If one is 100% associated with the Lord's service, they have to have no concerns whatsoever of how they're going to be maintained and how their service is going to be protected. All of this is going to be done, and it is going to be done very naturally. So it's quite astonishing to see how even impossible circumstances, the Lord appears and he restores the planet, and then he encourages the process of creation. And this is all being done quite effortlessly. And why is it being done effortlessly? It is being done without much endeavor by Lord Brahma or by Manu, because Manu and Shatarupa, they manifest from Lord Brahma. So Manu is male, Shatarupa is the female counterpart, and they have been tasked to produce progeny, to populate the world. But then where would they go to populate the world while the planet itself is missing? What is the facility for them to populate the world? Then at that point in time, Lord Brahma instructs Manu to offer prayers to Krishna. And the prayers themselves result in the appearance of Lord Varāha. And that is how the planet is restored, and Manu and Shatarupa practically begin the process of creation. So we'll go through the chapter and we'll pause if necessary to give some comments. We will now read the translation. This is chapter 13 of 3rd canto. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, "O king, after hearing all these most virtuous topics from the sage Maitreya, Vidura inquired further on the topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which he adored to hear. Vidura said, O great sage, what did Swayambhuva, the dear son of Brahma, do after obtaining his very loving wife? O best of the virtuous, the original king of kings, Manu, was a great devotee of the personality of Godhead Hari, and thus it is worth hearing of his sublime character and activities. Please describe them. I am very eager to hear." Persons who hear from a spiritual master with great labor and for a long time must hear from the mouths of pure devotees about the character and activities of pure devotees. Pure devotees always think within their hearts of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, who awards his devotees liberation. Sri Sukadev Goswami said, the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna was pleased to place his lotus feet on the lap of Vidura because Vidura was very meek and gentle. The sage Maitreya was very pleased with Vidura's words, and being influenced by his spirit, he attempted to speak. Now, in this verse, the position of Vidura is being described. The position of Vidura is so special. He's so special in the overall hierarchy that Krishna practically chose to go to his house when he visits Hastinapura. He spends time with Sri Vidura. He also allows Vidura to render very personal service. He's resting and he's placing his lotus feet on Vidura's lap. This is the amount of honor that has been accorded to Vidura. Sri Vidura had direct opportunity to serve Krishna by giving him direct service. This is just the most fascinating part where this is being described. Now, what is also very fascinating, Krishna wanted to award the benediction, which is the greatest of benediction, to Vidura, of being able to come in touch with a very special experience. The very special experience was for Vidura to meet Sri Uddhava. The very special experience was also for Vidura to hear from Maitreya Rishi. Uddhava was a very exalted devotee. He is a cousin of Krishna, very dear to Krishna. And they also have almost similar experience, in a sense, appearance. They look like each other. And Sri Vidura had the opportunity to come in touch with Uddhava whilst wandering from one pilgrimage site to another. He comes to Mathura Mandal. In Mathura Mandal, on the banks of Yamuna, he comes in touch with Sri Uddhava. See, when you wander and you want to go to the special places of pilgrimage, the opportunity for wandering and coming to a place of pilgrimage is not so much to visit the pilgrimage, it is to actually meet sadhus. Because it's very difficult for us to actually have a manifested realization of the Dham. The Dham cannot be experienced by eyes because we have not reached the point of being able to have direct experiences on the Dham, because there are pastimes that are occurring all the time. The Dham is Nitya. It is basically, it is non-different from Goloka. And Sri Radha and Krishna and their associates, they are constantly engaging in different pastimes in the Dham. We cannot see those pastimes because we don't have the ability, because we haven't reached the qualification of developing love to such an extent that our eyes can actually witness the pastimes of the divine couple. However, the sadhus who are purified and who are premi bhaktas, who are dedicated, then they have the ability to witness pastimes. And as a consequence, we have to take advantage of coming to the Dham, not simply to see the Dham because we may not be able to see much, but to hear from the sadhus, because the sound vibration of the sadhus who basically have realized Krishna, that sound vibration can actually give us deep faith. Now, Sri Vidura is demonstrating the benefit by walking towards Mathura. He is basically, first of all, decided that I want to reject my position. I want to reject the so-called position given by material nature. Then he is practically wanting to proceed on a pilgrimage. And then the good intention of going on a pilgrimage is already manifest. But then what is the good fortune of actually meeting Uddhava? That good fortune is first seen by Sri Vidura. It's not an ordinary occurrence. It is just that he is meeting with Uddhava, who has actually been with Krishna while Krishna is departing. So he is able to share the most intimate of pastimes, or rather the most intimate, most confidential of aspects of Krishna's, disappearance pastime. And at that time, Vidura hears from Uddhava that Krishna remembered Vidura. See, this is not an ordinary sequence again. How many times can one claim that Krishna basically remembers them and makes arrangements? So this is such an extraordinary personality that Krishna remembers Vidura, dispatches Uddhava, and then there is Maitreya Rishi who is meditating in Mathura, nearby in a close proximity. And then Sri Uddhava directs Vidura to go and talk to Maitreya Rishi, who was also present in front of Krishna. So this arrangement of being able to maintain devotional service is being done so naturally, so seamlessly, just because the devotee is dependent on Krishna. Everything else is being provided. All kinds of resources are being provided for the devotee to further devotional service. So now here we are practically being cautioned to understand Sri Vidura carefully. Sri Vidura had direct personal service. Krishna placed his lotus feet on Vidura's lap. It's very intimate. Going home to Vidura's house, honoring Bhoga, they wanted to feed him. He eats and he is resting, and he is giving an opportunity for Vidura to serve him directly. That is being described here. The sage Maitreya said to Vidura, after his appearance, Manu, the father of mankind, along with his wife, thus addressed the reservoir of Vedic wisdom, Brahma, with obeisances and folded hands. You are the father of all living entities and the source of their subsistence, because they are all born of you. Please order us how we may be able to render service unto you. O worshipful one, please give us your directions for the execution of duty within our working capacity, so that we can follow it for fame in this life and progress in next. Lord Brahma said, my dear son, O Lord of the world, I'm very pleased with you, and I desire all blessings for both you and your wife. You have without reservation surrendered yourself unto me with your heart for my instructions. Yeah. So in this particular statement, Lord Brahma is practically what we would call as praising Manu and Shatarupa. Now the next verse, he's using some special words. O hero, your example is quite befitting a son in relationship with his father. This sort of adoration for the superior is required. One who is beyond the limit of envy, who is sane, accepts the order of his father with great delight and executes it to full capacity. Here, in this verse, the actual word which is being used by Lord Brahma is Guru. Yeah, on to the superior. When he is using the word superior, he's actually saying, Etavati Atmajaya Viraha Karyahi Apachititer Guru. Guru is being used. Gurau is being used, which means that you're surrendering to authority. You're being able to accept the orders of authority. So Lord Brahma is very pleased because the initial attempt by Lord Brahma to bring progeny didn't work well. He bought the Kumaras. The 4 Kumaras, they decided that they do not want to engage in any kind of procreation activity. They practically disobeyed their father and they went away to engage in transcendental, activity. They wanted to basically endeavor to reach the transcendental goal. So they practically disobeyed Brahma and they went away for pursuing transcendental goals. This angered Lord Brahma. The angry Lord Brahma produced Rudra between his eyebrows. Yeah, the anger of Lord Brahma manifested between his eyebrows and it became Rudra. Why was he angry? Because the previous sons refused to obey his order. His order was, please engage in the process of procreation. You're being brought here to populate this planet. The Kumaras said, no, we have other business to do. They just rejected Lord Brahma's orders. They sought forgiveness from him because he was a superior, he was a father, but then they did not want to engage in the process of engaging in procreation. They just chose transcendental goals and they left their own way. This angered Lord Brahma. And then now in this verse, it is being described that he is actually very pleased because the son who is coming now, Manu, he is ready to obey his father. He is ready to submit himself. Here, the commentary given by Srila Prabhupada is such that there is sin incurred. There is actually sinful reactions incurred when one does not obey the father. You see? And this is being demonstrated in the Ramayana. This is being demonstrated here, that when one does not obey the father, then one incurs sinful reactions. And these sinful reactions themselves can be a hindrance for one to move forward in their lives in general. Yeah, and this is very heavy, actually. It's quite heavy. It's quite heavy when one does not engage in the process of actually marrying and then having progeny and then being able to further the lineage, because the pitris, the ancestry who are a part of the family, they expect progeny to be produced and then they expect the progeny to offer oblations, because the continuation of the line requires that each and every generation offer oblations so that the pitris can be maintained. So there's anger from the pitris. So this is a bad reaction. It is a karmic reaction which can affect the person. So there are 2 paths which are given in the Vedas. One becomes a follower of the Kumaras, becomes an absolute fixed transcendentalist. They become sannyasis. They practically take up the idea of spreading transcendental work and they're engaging with transcendental goals. And the other is the Grahastha ashram, where they bring progeny so that the progeny can continue the lineage. So these are 2 responsibilities for where one is supposed to engage in. Either, going in the path of the Kumaras, you go in the path of Manu. There is no in between. So this is not encouraged in the Vedic system. Now here in this particular circumstance, Srila Prabhupada is commenting saying that the Kumaras angered Lord Brahma and they incurred sin because they did not obey their father. However, it did not affect them because their goal was transcendental. If the goal is transcendental, then one can disobey the father and get away with it. If the goal is not transcendental, then there are sinful reactions. So if the father interferes with the transcendental goal, then one can reject that instruction and follow a superior instruction. What is the superior instruction? The superior instruction is to follow the instructions of the guru. If one cannot follow the instructions of the father, they follow the instructions of the guru. Yeah. So there is no sinful reaction if one were to be able to follow the instructions of the guru and pursue transcendental goals. And for that reason, if the father's instruction is obstruction, it is basically an obstruction and it is causing obstacles, then they can reject such an instruction. So there's a relative comparison between the merits of rejecting an instruction, disrespecting a superior, versus pursuing a higher goal. So it is the goal which is being focused on. Yeah. So it is 100% focused on the goal. So that's being described here in this particular verse. So here, Lord Brahma is saying, "O hero, your example is quite befitting a son in relationship with father. This sort of adoration for the superior is required. One who is beyond the limit of envy and who is sane, accepts the order of his father with great delight and executes it to his full capacity. Since you are my very obedient son, I ask you to beget children qualified like yourself in the womb of your wife. Rule the world in pursuance of the principles of devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus worship the Lord by performance of yajna. O king, if you can give proper protection to the living beings in the material world, that will be the best service for me. When the Supreme Lord sees you to be a good protector of the conditioned souls, certainly the master of the senses will be very pleased with you. So a king is supposed to protect. Which part of the body is the king? The king actually is the arms of the Purusha. The king represents the arms of the Purusha. Because he is representing the arms of the Purusha, he is practically supposed to offer protection, and that is how he's going to serve the Purusha. When I use the word Purusha, I'm referring to Krishna, the Lord. He is the Purusha. He is the universal form. In the idea of execution of material activities, he appears as the universal form. And in that particular universal form, the Kshatriyas are the arms. And as a consequence, any king who has the capacity to protect his subjects spiritually, see, the protection just is not materially protecting the body. The modern conception is all about being able to engage in sense gratification, being able to engage in nonsense, but then somehow or the other, that sense gratification has to be protected. Yeah. When we were children, when I was a child, I think that was the time when Superman came out. I guess most of you would have seen Superman if you grew up. And this was back in the late 70s. And it was very exciting as a child to go and watch Superman. But then you realize that what does Superman do? Superman basically is protecting the sense gratification of that particular city. Yeah, he's not really protecting spiritual potency. He's protecting the sense gratification. As long as you don't go rob a bank, which is the basic morality of the modern law, you're all right. You're not too bad. So I will give you protection. So the point being that is not what is being described here. Protection given here in Shastra is about protecting spiritual activity. There are instances of kings described in Bhagavatam. You can read about Kartavirya Arjuna in the 8th canto, in the episode with Sri Parashurama, the 9th canto, the episode with Lord Parashurama, Kartavirya Arjuna was so powerful. He had all the siddhis and the nidhis. He was so powerful that he could practically control the consciousness of his subjects. He could actually monitor and control the consciousness of those who lived in his kingdom. He was so powerful a king. That is the real Kshatriya, where he is able to practically monitor consciousness and ensure that the population is being steered towards their spiritual growth, and they're given opportunities to execute their duties in accordance with Shastra. So that is basically the duty of a Kshatriya. So here, when the word protection is being used, it is in the context of being able to protect spirituality. The gati, the forward movement, right? We say it's gati. Gati means forward movement, direction. We use the word gati for all of those. Now, this particular gati or forward movement has to be preserved by the Kshatriya. A very good, environment which is peaceful, where everybody can execute their duties and be able to have a forward movement of consciousness is the actual duty of one who has come to rule. So here it said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Janardana, Lord Krishna, is the form to accept all results of sacrifice. If he is not satisfied, then one's labor for advancement is futile. He is the ultimate self, and therefore one who does not satisfy him certainly neglects his own interests. Sri Manu said, O all-powerful Lord, O killer of all sins, I shall abide by your order. Now please let me know my place and that of the living entities born of me. O master of the demigods, please attempt to lift the earth, which is merged in the great water, because it is the dwelling place for all living entities. It can be done by your endeavor and by the mercy of the Lord. So this is the earth being submerged into the Garbhodaka ocean. So it is said that there is an extraordinary amount of fire that is experienced at the end of Lord Brahma's day. This fire emanates from the mouth of Lord Ananta. It burns up all the planetary systems right up to Maharloka, Swargaloka, all the grahas, all the constellations, nakshatras, everybody is destroyed. This fire is so great that the fire from the mouth of Lord Ananta, it chases people from Maharloka. They travel all the way to Satyaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka to escape the heat. Now this heat is practically like burning something to purify. And then after this heat is being imposed, there's water. There's very high level of rains, the destructive rain to such an extent that the world is just inundated. Now, this particular rain submerges the planet beneath the Garbhodaka ocean. So that is the task which is practically stopping the process of creation. Sri Maitreya said, thus seeing the earth merged in the water, Brahma gave his attention for a long time to how it could be lifted. So there is contemplation by Lord Brahma. Now he is actually contemplating. He is contemplating on how such a heavy object, an entire planet, how do you lift the planet from water? So this is basically a description of the Shweta Varāha. What we are looking at here is a description of the Shweta Varāha Kalpa. It is not the Chakshusha Varāha. Chakshusha Varāha is when, the killing of Hiranyaksha occurs. Shweta Varāha is when the process of creation has to begin. And then for the process of creation to happen properly, they would need to bring the earth back. Brahma thought, while I have been engaged in the process of creation, the earth has been inundated by a deluge and has gone down into the depths of the ocean. What can we do who are engaged in this matter of creation? It is best to let the Almighty Lord direct us. O sinless Vidura, all of a sudden, while Brahma was engaged in thinking, a small form of a boar came out of his nostril. The measurement of the creature was not more than the upper portion of a thumb. O descendant of Bharata, while Brahma was observing him, that boar became situated in the sky in a wonderful manifestation as gigantic as a great elephant. Struck with wonder at observing the wonderful boar-like form in the sky, Brahma, with great Brahmanas like Marichi, as well as the Kumaras and Manu, began to argue in various ways. They just didn't know what it was. Is this some extraordinary entity come in the presence of a boar? It's very wonderful that he has come from my nose. First of all, this boar was seen no bigger than the tip of a thumb, and within a moment, he was as large as a stone. When they use the word stone in the translation, they're describing a mountain. My mind is perturbed. Is he the supreme personality of Godhead Vishnu? While Brahma was deliberating with his sons, the supreme personality of Godhead Vishnu roared tumultuously like a great mountain. Now, Srila Jiva Goswami and Sri Sridhar Goswami, Sridhar Swami, these are all commentators of the Srimad Bhagavatam. They all describe the roaring of a mountain. Yes, the mountain is a living entity, but then how does the mountain roar? When wind passes through mountains, it actually creates a roar. It creates a roar which is extraordinary. It's like a living entity. Yeah, if you want to really see the roar of a storm, you should come to Vrindavan. You will literally be able to see life where you will literally see that the roaring of the wind is extraordinary. I've never seen it before like this. Yeah, I've never seen it. It's just extraordinary. The sound and the intensity, even if it is for a few minutes, it will be really intense. It will move things all over on the place. So it's quite extraordinary. So it's like a living entity. It's a living entity. It is not just wind. It is not a storm. It's a living entity. The omnipotent Supreme Personality of Godhead enlivened Brahma and the other highly elevated Brahmanas by again roaring with his uncommon voice, which echoed in all directions. When the great sages and thinkers who residents of Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Satyaloka heard the tumultuous voice of Lord Bor, which was the all-auspicious sound of the all-merciful Lord, it is said that the entire body of Lord Varāha was just complete mercy. He was just complete mercy who could drive away all kinds of illusion from the heart of the devotee. So he is all merciful. He's complete mercy. They chanted auspicious chants from the three Vedas. Playing like an elephant, he entered into the water after roaring again in reply to the Vedic prayers by the great devotees. The Lord is the object of the Vedic prayers, and thus he understood that the devotees' prayers were meant for him. Before entering the water to rescue the earth, Lord Bor flew in the sky, slashing his tail, his hard hairs quivering, his very glance was luminous, and he scattered the clouds in the sky with his hooves and his glittering white tusks. He was personally the Supreme Lord Vishnu and was therefore transcendental. Yet because he had the body of a hog, he searched after the earth by smell. His tusks were fearful, and he glanced over the devotee brahmanas engaged in offering prayers. Thus he entered the water. Diving into the water like a giant mountain, Lord Bor divided the middle of the ocean, and the two high waves appeared as arms of the ocean, which cried loudly as if praying to the Lord. O Lord of all sacrifices, please do not cut me in two. Kindly give me protection. You can just imagine, this is like an extraordinarily large object falling into water, creating waves. And this wave itself was so massive and the division was so intense that the ocean appeared as if it was divided into two halves. Unbelievable. The description itself is so enticing, very, very exciting, actually. Lord Bor penetrated the water with his hooves, which were like sharp arrows, and found the limits of the ocean, although it was unlimited. He saw the earth, the resting place for all living beings, lying as it was in the beginning of creation, and he personally lifted it. Lord Bor very easily took the earth on his tusks and got it out of the water. Thus he appeared very splendid. Then his anger, glowing like the Sudarshana wheel, he immediately killed the demon Hiranyaksha, although he tried to fight with the Lord. You see, this particular verse is describing the Chakshusha Varāha. The previous verses were describing Shweta Varāha. So the idea is that there is an amalgamation here of the two different time frames in which Lord Varāha appeared. One to lift the earth at the end of Lord Brahma's day, to restore creation, and the other to practically give room for what I would call as Hiranyaksha, killing and then restoring the earth again to continue the process of creation. Thereupon, Lord Bor killed the demon within the water, just as a lion kills an elephant. The cheeks and tongue of the Lord became smeared with the blood of the demon, just as an elephant becomes reddish from digging in the purple earth. Then the Lord, playing like an elephant, suspended the earth on his edge of his curved white tusks. He assumed a bluish complexion like that of a tamala tree. And thus the sages headed by Brahma could understand him to be the supreme personality of Godhead and offered respectful obeisances unto the Lord. All the sages uttered with great respect, O incomparable enjoyer of all sacrifices, all glories and all victories unto you. You are moving in your form of the personified Vedas, and in the hair holes of your body, the oceans are submerged. For certain reasons to uplift the earth, you have now assumed the form of a boar. O Lord, your form is worshipable by performance of sacrifice, but souls who are simply miscreants are unable to see it. All the Vedic hymns, Gayatri and others, are in touch of your skin. In your bodily hairs is the kusha grass, in your eyes is the clarified butter, and in your 4 legs are the 4 kinds of fruitive activities. So they are describing the Lord who is Yagya Varāha. This is Yagya Varāha who is being described. O Lord, your tongue is a plate of sacrifice. Your nostril is another plate of sacrifice. In your belly is the eating plate of sacrifice, and another plate of sacrifice, the holes of your ears. In your mouth is the Brahma plate of sacrifice. Your throat is the plate of sacrifice known as Soma, and whatever you chew is known as Agni Hotra. Moreover, O Lord, the repetition of your appearance is the desire for all kinds of initiation. Your neck is the place for three desires. Your tusks are the result of initiation and the end of all desires. Your tongue is the prior activities of initiation. Your head is the fire without sacrifice, as well as the fire of worship, and your living forces are the aggregate of all desires. O Lord, your semen is the sacrifice called Soma Yagya. Your growth is the ritualistic performance in the morning. Your skin and touch sensations are the 7 elements of the Agnishtoma sacrifice. Your bodily joints are symbols of various other sacrifices performed in 12 days. Therefore, you are the object of all sacrifices called Soma and Ashoma, and you are bound by the Yagyas only. This is Yagya Varāha Dev, basically the Lord who has appeared to practically further the process of creation by accepting sacrifices. And once the instruction is received by Manu and Shatarupa, they're engaging in the process of procreation, but the procreation process they're engaging in is also an offering of sacrifice because they're following instructions for the furtherance of the population of the planet. O Lord, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we are worshipable and are worshipable by universal prayers, Vedic hymns, and sacrificial ingredients. We offer obeisances unto you. You can be realized by the pure mind, freed from all visible and invisible material contamination. We offer our respectful obeisances to you as a supreme spiritual master of knowledge and devotional service. O lifter of the earth with its mountains, which you have lifted with your tusks, is situated as beautifully as a lotus flower, with leaves sustained by an infuriated elephant that is coming out of the water, just coming out of the water. You know, the description of the earth, which is being given here, carried by Lord Varāha, is like an elephant grabbing a lotus by the stem, and then it is stepping out of water. So how insignificantly light is the lotus in the trunk of the elephant. You know, the elephant grabs the lotus by its trunk. It is carrying the lotus curled in its trunk. How insignificant is it in terms of weight? That is the same description that is being given here, where he is appearing, and then the entire planet placed on his tusk is actually appearing as if, you know, a lotus is being brought forth by an elephant. O Lord, as the peaks of great mountains become beautiful when decorated with clouds, your transcendental body has become beautiful because of your lifting the earth on the edge of your tusks. O Lord, for the residential purpose of all inhabitants, both moving and non-moving, this earth is your wife, and you are the Supreme Father. We offer our respectful obeisances unto you, along with Mother Earth, in whom you have invested your own potency, just as an expert sacrificer puts fire in the Arani wood. Yeah. The potency which is being described here is the potency where we see the suspension of the planet in the sky. The earth is floating. The ability of the earth to float, which is the force of gravitation, is the potency of the Lord, which is actually allowing the earth to float. The earth was submerged. Now, what is being submerged is now back again, and it is floating, and that is the potency of the Lord. The earth is also considered to be the consort of the Lord. So when we use the word Bhu Varāha, it is similar to Lakshmi Varāha. Bhu here is the creative potency of the Lord. And that creative potency of the Lord is his consort, who very specifically appears so that the creative activities of the planet and of the universe could continue. So Bhu Varāha is Bhushakti. Bhushakti is the potency of the Lord of being able to manifest intelligence to be able to create. So the same potency of Bhushakti is the potency of Saraswati, because all forms of creation occurs due to the application of intelligence. The application of intelligence is governed by and rather enriched by Mother Saraswati, and Lord Brahma is engaging in creation, and his potency of creation is Mother Saraswati. But then this is secondary, because Lord Brahma is the secondary creator, and then Mother Saraswati is also the consort of Lord Brahma, who is secondary. So who is the origin? The origin is Lord Varāha, and his consort is Bhushakti. So here, when he is bringing Mother Earth back, the potency of preservation of Mother Earth is practically called Bhushakti. So that's why he is called Bhuvaraha. O Lord, for the residential purposes of all inhabitants, both are moving and non-moving. This earth is your wife and you are the Supreme Father. We offer our respectful obeisances unto you, along with Mother Earth, in whom you have invested your own potency, just as an expert sacrificer puts fire in the Arani wood. What is the potency of creation? The potency of creation is to know how to use the tools and the resources as given in Shastra. So in reality, the process of creation is described in the Vedas. And that's why Mother Saraswati is the potency of Lord Brahma, because he is creating subtle phenomena. When you have clarity of an idea, before you manifest something physically, you need to have an extraordinarily clear perception of what you want to do. So the creation of that very clear perception of creation, right, has to occur before it manifests physically, which means before you create something, you need to have a conception of the creation which is very clear, very, very lucid. And it has to be subtle. Now, that conception is a subtle aspect. That requires intelligence. That is the basic knowledge available in the Vedas. So when one is in touch with the creative intelligence of the Lord, when one is blessed by the Lord, they have the ability to have very clear visualization of what is to be achieved. And when they have very clear visualization of what is to be achieved, then the resources to manifest such a visualization also appear. So what is it that Lord Brahma does? Lord Brahma, he practically is creating what we would call a blueprint. His blueprint is based on the instructions of the Lord. He is receiving a map. He is receiving a master plan. He is receiving a master plan from Krishna. Based on the master plan, he is creating smaller blueprints. This blueprint is a very lucid framework. And based on that, there are manifestations that are occurring physically. Yeah. So what is the potency of being able to actually conceive of something which is yet to be created? That potency requires extraordinary amount of intelligence and the use of intelligence and the application of intelligence. All of that comes from Mother Saraswati, but her origin is Bhushakti. Yeah, just as Lord Brahma's origin is Krishna, the Bhushakti, which is his creative potency, Krishna's creative potency, is then manifest as Saraswati next to Lord Brahma. Who else but you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, could deliver the earth from within the water? It's not very wonderful for you. However, because you acted most wonderfully in the creation of the universe, by your energy, you created this wonderful cosmic manifestation. O Supreme Lord, undoubtedly we are inhabitants of the most pious planets, the Jana, Tapas, and Satyalokas. But still, we have been purified by the drops of water, sprinkling from your shoulder hairs by the shaking of your body. This is so wonderful. The Lord appears, he's dipped into the Garbhodaka ocean, so his body is wet, and then he's shaking his body to relieve himself of the wet water, and all that water is sprinkling on the residents of Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka, and they're all being purified because there's no difference between that water and Mother Ganga. Mother Ganga manifested from the lotus feet of the Lord. This is basically the water that has washed the Lord, and this water practically is purifying the residents of Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Satyaloka. O Lord, There's no limit to your wonderful activities. Anyone who desires to know the limit of your activities is certainly nonsensical. Everyone in this world is conditioned by the powerful mystic potencies. Please bestow your costless mercy upon these conditioned souls. The sage Maitreya said, the Lord being thus worshipped by all the great sages and transcendentalists, touched the earth with his hooves, and placed it on the water. In this manner, the personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, the maintainer of all living entities, raised the earth from within the water, and having placed it afloat on the water, he returned to his own abode. If one hears and describes in a devotional service attitude this auspicious narration of the Lord Bore, which is worthy of description, the Lord who is within the heart of everyone is very pleased. Nothing remains unachieved when the Supreme Personality of God is pleased with someone. By transcendental achievement, one understands everything else to be insignificant. One who engages in transcendental loving service is elevated to the highest perfectional stage by the Lord himself, who is seated in everyone's heart. This is one moment. Verse 50. Who other than one who is not a human being can exist in this world and not be interested in the ultimate goal of life? Who can refuse the nectar of narrations about the personality of God, its activities, which by itself can deliver one from all material pangs? That's the last verse. That is the last verse. How fortunate are we that we have the ability to chant Harinam, which will manifest Krishna's form into our hearts. What is the ultimate goal of being able to chant Harinam? The ultimate goal of being able to chant Harinam is to have darshan of the divine couple. When Nama is chanted, Nama becomes Rupa, Guna, and Leela. Right? Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela. Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela has to start with Nama. So when there's very sincere chanting of Harinam, everything else manifests, and one is able to basically, make advancement. So this is basically an opportunity which is being described here, that if one has a service attitude and one is engaging in pure devotional service, all kinds of resources, including intelligence, resources of determination, resources of physical manifestation of their plans, everything will be provided by the Lord. Serving the Lord requires one condition, and that condition is described by Srila Rupa Goswami. The condition itself is Anya Bilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavritam, Anukulena Krishna Anushilanam Bhaktiruttama. What is the singular condition? Singular condition is Anya Bilashita. There cannot be any other Abhilasha. There cannot be any other desire. If that is a condition of bhakti. That's actually the condition of bhakti. Bhakti, which is Abhideya, has only one condition. There cannot be any other desire. To the extent to which there are other desires, it's Mishra Bhakti. It's not conditioned. It is not unconditional. It has certain qualities of wanting to achieve things, wanting to do things which are beyond the goal given by Shastra, etc. And as a consequence, that is not considered to be pure bhakti. So all the ingredients that are necessary for executing bhakti will not be fully manifest, and there would be some struggles because there is the concept of Mishra Bhakti. But if one is completely freed from the concept of Mishra Bhakti, which is where they have no other desire other than wanting to please Krishna, they want to engage in Abhideya after falling in love and after knowing Sambandha, then at that point in time, there really isn't any boundary. Everything is manifest. All kinds of results are being provided. All kinds of challenges, extraordinary challenges are being taken care of in a manner which is quite unbelievable. So that is being demonstrated here, because this demonstration that we see in this particular chapter has everything to do with 9.22. 9.22 of the Bhagavad Gita talks about preserving what we have, carrying what we lack. This is literally preserving what we have and carrying what we lack. Yeah, Lord Brahma wanted to create. So what was required to be preserved was preserved, and what was lacking was provided. And as a consequence, he was able to move forward with this process. So we'll stop here and then we'll take a few questions before we conclude the day's chapter. Any questions?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat.
Dandavat.
I was just contemplating, you mentioned about Brahma getting so angry with the four Kumaras. And this is Brahma, he's the Lord of goodness. What to speak of us then, He gets angry with the Kumaras.
Yes, because the mode of ignorance is an ingredient in the material creation. Everyone who is in the material creation is susceptible, vulnerable to the mode of ignorance. Even those who are situated in Satyaloka are still within the material sphere. As a consequence, they can be influenced by the mode of ignorance, which is what causes destruction. Destruction requires the mode of ignorance. And if there is the mode of ignorance, then you automatically see certain level of destruction occurring in life. And that is basically experienced in this particular episode, 2 chapters preceding. So yeah, if you're in the material universe, then you are in touch with the lower modes of nature, which is the whole purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu. Abhadreshu is the mode of passion and ignorance because it is highly inauspicious. The mode of passion and ignorance are the root cause of distraction. They are the root cause of us basically not being able to render pure devotional service. But the answer is that coming in touch with the Srimad Bhagavatam is how we purify ourselves. But until we are purified fully to the point where there isn't a necessity for us to even have any kind of material conception, one is vulnerable because you're a part of this world.
Oh, I have a practical question, more which I am at the moment experiencing. So I just thought I'll have some insight. So where we are chanting, when we are chanting, we are asking, "Oh my Lord, please engage me in your devotional service." That's what we are asking for. And lo and behold, we get lots of devotional service. And then it comes to a point that it is too much. It affects all other aspects. And then we're not able to balance. And sometimes we have to say no gracefully. And if you say no grace, no 3-4 times, more likely that that service might be given to somebody else. So somebody calls you and say, "Would you like to do it? If you're available, you're there." And then you get more service. Uh, where I am thinking is there is a line, thin line between complacency and saying no to protect your own health and next day's sadhana and everything else. How do we understand that this is not coming from a complacency level of saying no, because I need to look after other balance other aspects, or you see where I'm coming from, Prabhu?
Yes, I do. Yes. Yes. See, the point being that this is a practical question, as you put it, and the answer is also quite practical. It is a matter of you being able to observe if you're able to do your service, such as chanting, or able to maintain your duties in a proper way. It is just an observation because you cannot sustain disruption for too long.
So
you cannot sustain it.
And also, service cannot be in the mode of passion as well. So, where you're going to the temple, you're taking on service. It's fantastic. You're getting service. You're doing, and then you're tired and you're resentful because of your physical inability. Krishna doesn't accept that service.
Well, Krishna has a very holistic view of who we are. He understands where we come from. He is not looking at any one particular aspect of who you are. He is looking at you as a package. He's trying to understand and say that, yes, these are all the responsibilities. This is when a person goes to bed. This is when they wake up. This is the condition of their body. This is their age. This is where they are overall. So the point being that what we want to do is we want to have an eye on being able to sustain our practice for a very long period of time. It's very good to have a lot of service because it purifies the limbs and it helps us maintain focus. And even if we are overwhelmed a few days, it's fine because that's perfectly fine because that's basically how we can intensify our effort. If you were to talk to any sannyasi who travels around, ISKCON sannyasi, because ISKCON sannyasis are traveling all the time, at least when before COVID, everybody is traveling and they were flying in and out of different cities and preaching, then you will find that they have to adjust to different countries, different water, different food, different kinds of climates. And then they also have to adjust to different time zones, schedules. And then they have to also maintain the sadhana. And then when they enter into an airport and they're received by the local devotees, they have to be very enthusiastic and filled with life so that they could preach and infuse life in others. Now, the point being that if you talk to them, they would say that they're also finding it difficult to maintain the sadhana. They will tell you that. If they're very honest about it, they will say that it's very difficult for them to maintain the sadhana. They're doing their best, but then they're also trying to balance their service and the opportunities. But somehow or the other, they also find time to be able to chant quality rounds. They make adjustments. They take time in Govardhan to rejuvenate. You see many of them coming and resting in Govardhan or in Radhakund, Sri Radhakund, and then coming back. So the point being that we need to have a practical sense of how much we can accomplish and why we are refusing and what is it that we are refusing for. If consistently, if you're being forced to not being able to chant your rounds, it's just a matter of time when you will give up. It's just a matter of time. So you should be very careful.
I don't think chanting is a problem. You get up at a certain time every day. But then if you've had an extra service that is your whole system goes, so you get up late and then you chant late and then you sort of...
Which is fine. See, which is fine. The point is that is fine as long as you are able to do your sadhana. If there is going to be intensity during the week because of services, that intensity is welcome because it will purify us. But if it is going to disturb your ability to consistently do your sadhana over a long period of time, because you're constantly, kind of into situations where you're not able to maintain things, then it's just a matter of time before it will start breaking down. So you have to be careful. There's nothing wrong in accounting for all of these and making adjustments. There's really nothing wrong. You're not really running away from service. You're not really saying no. You are being cautious, understanding that there's a practical side to it and how much you can do and how far you can go. And you're basically taking steps to protect yourself. So this is a matter of something that you need to basically think about before you present it as, I don't want to come for service. Because there are devotees who are genuinely not capable of service, which means that they can't. They might be going through health issues. They might be going through bodily changes which they can't cope with. And they may literally be struggling. And we don't want to judge those devotees as being lazy because we want to know what is going on in their lives to find out, why is it that they're struggling and what is the issue. On the other hand, you might also have those who generally don't want to do service and they're a little bit hesitant to participate in this kind of activity. Then if we examine their lives, we want to know what is it that motivates you. They might say, what motivates me is to sit and chant. And that is perfect. If you have devotees who are enthused by chanting japa, that's perfect. Let them chant. If you have devotees completely enthused by wanting to just read Srimad Bhagavatam because that's what really gets them going, that is perfectly fine. So I think what this requires is for leadership in the local yatra to understand devotee needs locally on a person-by-person basis and also evaluate it so that that's very personal care that's given to them. It cannot be one rule, one size fits all shoe. It doesn't work because we are all individuals. So, but from a broad perspective, to answer your question, because now I have an audience, so I need to have a much broader reply that I'm giving you. You must evaluate if it is causing disruption over a long period of time. It's as simple as that. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. That was insightful. For me, the thin line is between complacence and overdoing. It's a very thin line.
True, because you need to basically evaluate it.
Yeah.
Am I refusing? Am I refusing because I'm lazy? Am I refusing because I'm in my comfort zone? Or am I refusing because my body is really aching and I can't do it, and my work pressure is such that I'm just kind of not in a position to offer that. But it is a matter of evaluation. That's why I'm saying it's a little particular. But what I'm trying to say is it's not sustainable. If you're constantly disturbed, you can't sustain it, because most devotees can't sustain the devotional service if they're disturbed. They cannot.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
All right. Hare Krishna. Okay, I'm going to take a question that's come on chat. Does every person who does not go to the spiritual world after death have to spend time in Pitraloka? If so, how long is this time? The answer is yes. But how long are you going to spend in Pitraloka? That is dependent on the availability of opportunities to come back into this world. A physical body opportunity has to be available. In the olden days, there were 4 varnas and there were 4 ashrams. There were 4 varnas in terms of, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Then there was the Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasi. In the modern day, you cannot really classify professions into these 4. You can to some extent, but you cannot fully do so because there are many other aspects of it which don't fit in. So when a soul departs, how is the demigod who is supposed to give us a body choose a profession for us when there's so much complexity in the activities that we have engaged in? What kind of environment can he bring us in terms of family circumstances? Yeah, because we don't have what we would call a clear delineation either, because those days people are born in a certain village, certain town, certain city. There was not much travel. Desires were not there of America. There were not desires of England when you're born in India. There were no desires of different parts of the world. But here, everybody is YouTubing. Everybody is watching the internet. Everybody is aspiring for things beyond the 4 square miles of their village or town or city. So now imagine this particular aspect, where all kinds of desires are being created, all kinds of futures are being decided. So people get transported from one particular place to another. A body has to be found, and then they have to come into being. So it's not so much a matter of even Pitraloka. People depart and they spend time in ghostly bodies for many long times, years even, because they can't find an appropriate place to be deposited and put back in. So it's quite a challenging situation. Yeah, the only grace, the greatest grace we have is in devotional service. If you study the life of a devotee, 9 out of 10 devotees' characteristics will be the same. They will all have similar aspirations. They will have somewhat similar eating habits. They will have somewhat similar, goals in life, etc., because they have been cultured by devotional service to operate in a certain way. So coming back into this world as a devotee is very easy, because you can find a devotee circumstance, because a lot of commonality is seen in devotee families. You can take a child and you can put a child in a devotee family quite easily, because one devotee family to another, there is some difference, but not a whole lot. But you can't do so otherwise. So that's the complexity. See, that's the issue. Let's just see. I think there was more to your question. What is the dependency that Pitris have from the descendants? If they have any, do they rely on them performing Shraddh to be released from Pitraloka? The answer is yes. The idea is that the lineage itself is not so much a matter of Pitris dependence. It is a problem is that we carry the sinful reactions of our ancestors, and those sinful reactions can impose themselves on us and our behavior and our desires. If, let us say, for example, that in anyone's family there was a very sinful person 4 or 5 generations back, that sinful person's reactions are affecting us as of today. We wouldn't be that way, but then he is around, his sinful reactions are being imposed upon us. So it is not so much even for the Pitris. It is for us that we have to work on ourselves so that we can clear out all these interferences. They are dependent to be delivered by Shraddh. Yes, this is the system. They are dependent to be delivered by Shraddh. Pitraloka is actually not a bad place. It is not a hell. We should distinguish the two. Pitraloka is where Lord Emerald sits. That's where the Pitris are. And that is where those who are qualified in the ancestry who have done their duties, etc., they go there. It is not bad, too bad. Yeah, they bless the family which is connected to them, and they're able to kind of support the family's initiatives. From there, it's almost like they have some powers to bless them, and they're sustained by the family's activities. However, the issue is when they go to health. The biggest problem that we face is not so much Pitraloka, etc. It has to do with the sinful reactions of ancestors. That's the main issue. Now, what I was also wanting to share is devotees do not particularly make offerings to Pitris. They do not. Devotees offer the Vaishnavas a feast, and then they offer a feast to the Vaishnavas after offerings are made to Krishna, and that feast practically feeds the Pitris. That is our way of doing things. Yeah, it is also very effective, having a sponsoring of a feast, and then you can feed the Vaishnavas. You could do it in the Dham specifically. If you do it in Vrindavan, you could do it in Mayapur, where you could sponsor feast to feed the Brahmanas during the passing of Tithi. And that practically is very, very purifying, very purifying. What is the purpose of Pitraloka? Is it a hellish planet meant for punishment? As long as a living entity is there, I assume reincarnation cannot take place. Yeah, Pitraloka, as I've explained earlier, is not hell. The Thalas and the hellish planets are very different from Pitraloka. Pitraloka is where Yamaraj is. So the Pitris also go there, and they basically, if they're pious, they spend some time there before coming back to Earth. So it's not too bad. All right. Is there any other question?
Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I just appreciate a few words of yours. It's lovely class, and it's wonderful, just encouraging reading Bhagavatam more and more. That's what got, especially today. I got just more in, just go and pick it up after this class. Would like to read, and all the devotees ask question, beautiful question, and it just answers for so many other devotees as well. One devotee asks question and answer for many. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you. I just appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji.
Dandavat.
Any other comment or question?
Hi, Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam. Yes.
So it's a wonderful class, Prabhuji, as Mataji said. Thank you for giving us your association and knowledge. So just because we were talking about the Pitras, so just a small question regarding that, Prabhuji. In some families, as we see that there are some Pitri dosh. It's not exactly related to the topic, but as we were talking about Pitras, so it reminded me that like if a person in a family has a Pitri dosh, like our father or anybody in our family, so does it goes on till generations, or it's related only to that person?
Actually, what is not transformed is transferred. What is not transformed is transferred. If the father cannot handle the karma, they would pass it on to the next generation. If the next generation is not able to handle the karma, they would pass it on to the subsequent generation. Everybody in the family is connected generationally. So there's a generational effect of things that are not resolved. Yeah, there's a generational effect. There really isn't what I would call as a circumstance where one person is affected, the other is not. So if the father doesn't resolve issues, then the sons will have to carry those issues on their shoulders.
Yeah, that makes sense, Prabhuji. So, so when a person takes birth in a particular family, so this is also like related to his karmas because of the Pitri dosh he's coming in that family. Is it related to his karmas as well?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. If, for example, someone could have offended their parents in the previous lifetime, then they would be born in a family which has a lot of Pitru dosh.
Okay, thanks a lot, Prabhuji. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Sure. Hare Krishna. Is anyone who reaches the position of Lord Brahma guaranteed next to go to the spiritual world, or can they fall back down to earth? The answer is that there are no guarantees if you're in the material world, but you are in a highly advantageous position to go back to the spiritual world if you're in that position, because you're in Satyaloka, which is the highest level of mode of goodness. And even if you engage in service, you're engaging in service as per the desires and the mandate of Krishna. So there's a greater level of connection to Krishna than one can imagine. So it's not an ordinary position. So for most cases, the answer is yes, they go back to the spiritual sky. However, there is no guarantee, because anything in the part of this, anything and everyone who comes to this particular world is going to experience challenges. They are going to have to deal with certain things. So we shouldn't use the word guaranteed. That's the only point. Similarly, do other living entities in Satya Yoga move on to the spiritual world, or can they fall back down? Same answer. They have an opportunity, but it is not easy for these entities in the spiritual sky, the Satya Loka, to move forward, because it is almost like the spiritual sky. So you don't develop a desire of wanting to move forward. There has to be a certain sense of frustration, discomfort for one to say that I don't want to be here. That doesn't happen. Imagine if your body doesn't deteriorate for trillions of years. Imagine if the environment is surcharged with the mode of goodness. The only thing missing is you don't have the association of the Supreme Lord. So what is going to happen? You're not really disturbed. You're in a very happy condition. And as a consequence, you don't really feel like endeavoring for a higher goal. So it's not a wonderful circumstance. This planet, our planet, gives you all those facilities. It's frustrating. We are in bodies that get destroyed. And then there are multiple desires of ours which don't get fulfilled. Sometimes we are given troubles which we don't desire. All of these make a nice recipe for one to become enthused enough to realize that they are suffering. They wake up to this, and then they endeavor towards wanting to move towards a higher goal. They don't want to basically come back to the material world and then continue this. But that doesn't happen. So it's a life of complacency, unless the person has already accomplished progress and they've already gained the spiritual credits, and they're just there so that they could take off along with Lord Brahma. So there are cases which do that as well. Okay. Can you let me know when you explain Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela appears when one chants? How can we distinguish if we are imagining the Rupa? Because I have a proclivity to draw, or the form of Krishna and Radha appears by the mercy and it is real. Yes. How do we imagine and how do we know if what is real and what is fictional, or rather our imagination? The point is that we have to depend on Shastra. Depending on Shastra essentially means that Shastra says that one has to be advanced and there has to be prema chakshu. There has to be chakshu, eyes, where they are completely anointed with prema for us to be able to see. Shastra says, Anya bilashita shunyam dhyana karma dhyana vritam. Anukulena Krishna Anushivanam Bhakti Uttama. Uttama Bhakti is granted to those who have no other abhilasha. So there are different Shastric revelations which tell us what is the quality that is expected. Now, what one should also experience is that they are not affected much. So you have many different classifications given in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. There are many classifications given in Madhurya Kadambini, where they talk about the higher levels of consciousness and what is experienced. For example, they say that it is, you basically are experiencing the quality of liberation. You're not affected by your environment. You're not affected by the body. You're not affected by the world as such. There's no attachment. Now, all of these are characteristics that are described of one who has purified themselves, and they're also able to basically chant very, very solid rounds. They're able to do many, many rounds. They have deep attraction, ruchi for Nam, and they are attached to chanting of Harinam. So when we observe all of this happening, then we can also say that some of the revelations that we have are consistent. But if you're just going to have revelations while we do not have deep ruchi, when we don't have a capacity to be disaffected by the world, meaning you're not affected to the point where you stop your sadhana, you're not affected by the world to the point where you become angry with Krishna, because people can become angry with Krishna if things don't go their way, and then they become upset that things are not going my way. When all of these disappointments and so on, and the behavior is not such, then we can understand that these two things match. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they are also describing the fact that if there are no other desires in the heart other than wanting to serve Krishna through chanting of Harinam by staying in Vrindavan, then Vrindavan will reveal itself in the heart of the devotee. So that is also a description, and then we are able to see the specific leelas as described by the acharyas. So there are many ways to qualify this, and so we can write all of this down and then qualify it. Then we would know whether we are seeing what we need to see, or is it a figment of our imagination. But even if you are imagining the beauty of Krishna and Radharani because you're an artist, even that is wonderful, because even that is manifesting because there is some blessing. Why do we carry the sinful reactions of the forefathers? Karma is intricate. Karma is intricate because once you're born in a family, there is matrilineal karma, karma from the side of the mother. There's patrilineal karma, there's karma from the side of the father. And then there is our own karma of the past. So depending on who we are, we practically are put into a certain family circumstance based on all of these experiences that we have to go through in this lifetime. So if the family has issues because in the previous lifetime, there was some lack of proper activity done for people who departed, there was no shraddh that was performed, there was no proper funeral rites performed, there was actual neglect and so on, then all of these can add up and become problematic. But we are born into a family which already has those problems. Then we experience life in the context of the family. It's quite complex, it's very intricate. Okay, I can possibly take one more question if anybody has. All right, I believe there aren't any more questions. So I'll stop here, and then we will continue with chapter 14 in the next week. And we will continue with our discussion of the third canto. All right then. Hare Krishna, all glories to Prabhupada.